and welcome back to another BetterMen Project podcast. I'm here, Colin Stevens, with Dr. Jason Farrah. We're back at it, and today we're going to be talking about how men need a mission. Jason, good to be with you again, brother.
Yeah, man. Happy to be here. Excited. This is a big one, I think. They're all going to be big, hopefully.
Yeah.
But I know I felt like this for a long time. I'm really excited to unpack this and break it down with you.
Yeah, and so one of the things that Jason and I met, almost a year ago, and we had lunch, and Jason talked to me about a transition he was making in his life, and it was a big deal, and he's been a surgeon for 20 years.
Yeah, fair to say. I've been a surgeon or studying to be a surgeon in my life now longer than I have not been those things.
so over half of your life.
Yeah. Exactly.
So a mission for you was to become a doctor. Like,
right.
We alluded to this off the air the other day, and so I wanted to just kind of get your story of what path you took to become a surgeon and what that was like. And we're talking about mission, and we're talking about being connected and driving and purpose and that kind of thing. And you just unpacked some stuff with me the other day that I thought was really, really meaningful that I think will help the listeners. So,
yeah, absolutely. Now in retrospect, as 47 years down the road and looking at my own son's lives and looking at my life as growing up, my father's life and other men's lives, I think that's an absolutely true statement. We see it in themes and movies. We were talking about Braveheart the other day and things. I got fortunate because it wasn't just go to college, get a degree, and get a job. And then I think we have these other landmarks in our life that we're looking for, and maybe those become missions. Have kids. What do you do when they run out? But this took a long, long time. So I had that built in for a long time, and so it was, you got to go to undergrad, you got to get the degree, you got to hit the prereqs for medical school, organic chemistry. Everybody knows you got to get an A in that class, and so we had you have that mission of going to undergrad, studying all the time, getting the grades. Then you have the mission of getting into med school, and then you have to have the strategic outlay for that, like going to war. Then once you're in med school, you have to have another strategic outlay, and you have to get the good grades. And before it was taking the MCAT to get into med school, then it was taking the USMLE, the medical licensing exam, when you're in med school, and meeting with certain people and shadowing doctors and shaking hands and understanding things, getting involved in research topics and studies based on what specialty you want to go into. And then once you get there, then you're in residency, and it starts all over again. And so I found myself going to work every day, learning to become a surgeon. And then after that, it was, okay, I got to become a surgical fellow. So you're talking about year after year, your mission was already laid out for you.
all right, so any of you who are thinking to yourselves, you're listening to this, and you're like, dang, that's a lot of schooling. Like, he just kept talking about school and school and school. Yes, it was a lot of schooling, and a good thing because he's a surgeon and he's saving people's lives. So thankfully he went through all that schooling. But so to even talk more about your story, there was you had your direction, you had your mission.
Oh, yeah.
And was there ever a time where you didn't feel like you had your mission, or your mission was confused, or at any point in your career path?
Yeah, and I think that's how I realized what internally was going on with me at that pivotal moment that I met you. And, you had been meeting some similar challenges in your lifetime at that point as well. And we're both in our 40s, so it's kind of interesting. You're younger than me, but we're still in our 40s. And so I was thinking about this, and I was saying, okay, why am I going to work every day and feeling this routine and feeling this empty feeling and this sense of being without purpose? Why is it bothering me so much where it didn't bother me before? Why is the grind bothering me? And I blamed it on a lot of things, but it finally hit me one day. And I think this is important, so I wanted to share it with everybody out there in the audience. And we talked about it the other day off camera. When I was a resident, I was going to learn how to become a general surgeon. When I was a fellow, I was learning how to become a critical care surgeon and a trauma surgeon. So every day that I went to work, I was going to work to become something. When I got my first job, it was at a brand new trauma center. I had entertained jobs at Wake Forest, staying where I was training. East Carolina University, a job in Memphis, or excuse me, not Memphis, but in Tennessee. I'm blanking now all of a sudden on, but it's not the point. And chose ultimately a job at a burgeoning, trauma center that was kind of becoming its own. And that was the big mission, was, take this from this hospital that wanted to have a trauma center to becoming an actual verified, state verified trauma center, and then an ACS verified, American College of Surgeons verified trauma center. And and we did accomplish that about 2 or 3 years in, stepwise. And then at around the 4th or 5th year, it was getting back to my roots of research. And that was heralded back to my fellow days, was, I'm in this new world of emergency general surgery, which was an adjunct to trauma surgery, and developing protocols and systems that were going to become foundational to this new specialty. So again, every day it was exciting. We're a team. We're all galvanized. You're galvanized around this common mission. And it was I didn't realize, but that was so important and fundamental to myself as a man, and having that sense of purpose. About year 4 or 5, I had some really cool ideas, I thought, at least, for some research protocols and research interest. And my trauma medical director, the boss man, did too. But I was working for a for-profit entity, and it was just like hurdles after hurdles and hoops after hoops. You had talked about this in the last episode, I believe, about how you had some ideas in the church or what have you, where they kind of got shot down by the old guard, the deacons and different things. And you said, oh, okay, it really opened your eyes to what you were dealing with. And so it was for me too. But the interesting thing was, I had already gone down that path of working for a for-profit agency instead of a not-for-profit hospital, and had kids by that time, had a lot to lose, right? Had a well-paying job. We had our second child, and my wife said, come on, we got to get, you're home more. I mean, you're not home more than you are home, and it's too hard with 2 kids. I love you, honey. You can keep being a surgeon, but we need to get to where there's family. So found a level 1 trauma center in Myrtle Beach. And I think the world of that center is not, and the people that work there, that's not what this is about. It's about me. But I was hired to become a staff surgeon and also a director of the critical care unit. But ran to those similar things again, where the mission that I had perceived was not the mission that ultimately was the desired one to be carried out by the powers that be, let's say. And it was more of a maintenance of the status quo. So that can get really mundane really fast. There were other things that I found, a mission to help the residents, maybe that was part of it, or learn robotics. That was a cool addition, and so for a short time, there were these fillers. But what I realized one day, when I was taking on more jobs and doing more elective surgery, covering more shifts, is that I was now going to work to get something. I was no longer going to work to become something.
Yeah.
And so when I made that transition to back out of this decades-long commitment to becoming a trauma surgeon, and a commitment I had made to the medical community at large, I felt, and to the population at large, wherever I happened to be working, and moved to what's called a locums trauma surgeon, and kind of, it would be part-time, so to speak, is a good way to think of it. It was hard, man. It was, because, I was, sometimes working 21 days in a row, and so dialed in and so hyper-focused. And I started thinking back about behaviors that I was doing, engaging in. And I don't mean like drinking or anything. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying like just day to day what I did and what I looked at and what were priorities. And all of a sudden I realized the priority now seems to be how many hours I can work, how many surgeries I can do, so I can become more and more what I perceived was a better provider for my family. And what ironically was happening now is becoming a worse husband and a worse father. And it wasn't that I intended to do that.
Sure.
It was a byproduct, because what was happening was I was no longer going to work to become something, to become now the critical care director, and then to develop the flesh out this new trauma program. And that's what it was initially. And it was nobody's fault there. I'm not saying that at all. This just, it was more of a organizational, structural component or structural quirk of a for-profit agency. When I say nobody there, I mean nobody that I worked with as a surgeon, and the staff. I love them. And I will always remember them, and they always be dear to my heart, and good friends. But I could no longer find the answer to that need for a mission, and so instead I replaced it with what I could get.
Sure.
And so I could get a paycheck. I could get a sense of maybe status in the community. I could get, I don't know, busyness, and maybe hide a place. I could get a place to hide from the reality of my life. And so I said, "Oh my gosh, that's it. Because for a long time afterwards, and I'm talking like months, I struggled with this, and wanting to slip back into that, or maybe find another job that was similar, to be back in that role that I knew so well, and it was a comfort to me, but it still would have been without that purpose. And that purpose was each day coming to work to become something, or, to become somebody who, if you have a research topic, for instance, you want to find out an answer to a research question, you're becoming a seeker of truth. You're becoming someone who knows about XYZ, whereas you were someone who didn't know about XYZ before. So there's always this element of becoming something, each day becoming something new, becoming something better. It was always what I could get. And so no longer was I going to work to become something. I was going to work to get something. And that was profound to me. And I said, oh my gosh, I did make the right decision to step away, if that's what it was. And that was the root cause of all these things that I was trading my health for wealth, working these ridiculous hours and stressing over how many surgeries I could get done in between shifts, elective surgeries. And it's just trying to do 5 jobs in one so that you could get more and get more and do more and prove that you could. It was, what was, I wasn't becoming anything. In fact, the opposite was happening. I was devolving almost, into this, how much can you get kind of scenario.
Yeah, and we need those times that shake us up for us to realize that, because it was a slow burn to get to that, right?
Absolutely.
Like
very insidious.
It wasn't just like all of a sudden you're like, oh hey, I'm gonna take this direction, and I'm just gonna only care about what I get.
Right.
It's almost like your mission or your purpose was fulfilled, and then it was, without replacing it with something else took its void.
Right. That's absolutely what happened.
And it's so interesting to me. I love it how you say, like, you were always trying to become something. Mm-hmm. And like in the effort of trying to become something, we become better. Right. We're growing, we're learning. And oftentimes it sounds like you probably had, it wasn't maybe just you doing research, maybe you had a team, or maybe you had other people that were involved with what you were doing. As men, we need something that's bigger than us.
Right.
And I'm not saying that for women, they need just themselves. I'm just saying, as men, we are better when we are pushing towards something that is bigger than us. We're not just looking to get for us.
Right.
And when we're just looking to get for us, that's when this selfishness kicks in.
Absolutely.
And it takes over, and it turns us into something that we don't really admire. It's something that we don't really want to be.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like Jordan Peterson will talk about from a psychological perspective, from classic psychology, and talk about he's one of the greatest thinkers in the Western world. and I'm sure a lot of people would disagree with me for that, but that's fine. But nonetheless, the guy is a profound thinker. From classic psychology, as best I understand it, he'll talk about how men are things focused, where women are more relationship focused. And it's not that a woman doesn't want to go to work each day and become something too. And it's not that all women are exactly the same, and not all men are.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but but it was interesting because sometimes, because of those common themes between the two sexes, we may miss something in our relationship with our wife, for instance. And I thought, well, honey, I'm earning more money. I'm getting money for the family. I'm getting this house for the family. I'm getting the kids baseball lessons or whatever. And she was like, yeah, but our relationship is suffering. Your relationship with the kids is suffering. Your relationship with friends and the community on a personal basis is suffering. You're almost in this hyper-focused, isolated chamber, just constant work, and
and sometimes we can feel pretty good when we're in that isolated chamber where we are really good at what we do. Like you're a surgeon who dialed in like that, and so you have to be. And so when you get that dialed in, it's something that you're really good at. Like sometimes it's easier to be in that, where it's maybe more challenging to be in a scenario where you don't feel like you have quite the expertise. Like I think about how much, oh my gosh, like conversations, like real conversations with my wife and my kids, like that's hard stuff. Like that's like I don't know if I'm prepared for that,
Absolutely.
And certainly when we do things more, we become better at them. But when I think about like that piece of you talking about like being so locked into work and there you have this greater mission and you know it in the back of your mind, but it's kind of hard to step into it and be in the mix of it all of the time when you're so good at what you're doing every day and still providing for your family. Like that's a good mission, right? Where,
it's a good thing. And it's funny, on the surface it sounds good, it looks good, and but it's not that every day is not a school day, and I mean that there's not a surgeon out there that's going to tell you, they shouldn't tell you they know everything. And you are learning new things every day. And the second you don't, and this is for any job, by the way, and the second you don't think you're not, watch out, because it means your hubris, your pride has gotten too big, right? But you're not necessarily becoming something new per se, or you're not growing as a person. You might be growing in skill.
Sure.
You might be growing in experience, but there's nothing defining about you or your surroundings or your work. Growing as a team in a work, it's strange. And so when you get caught in that rut, you feel purposeless, and you feel like the mission's gone. You know, you've attained this certain level of achievement, and there's no more mission. And I felt it was strange. I felt I was doing the right thing, and I felt like I was being a provider, and I felt like I was taking care of my family, and I tried to be at all the things that I could be at, and so I felt like I was being a man. But fundamentally, I had lost that mission. There was no mission. Like where was the mission? And I felt purposeless, and every day became the same, and it became almost demoralizing. It was. Seriously, it was really dark. And now I know, had I to go back and look at it, I would say you might want to check in with yourself or with your coach, or with your small group that you're in a retreat, or and say, have you lost your mission, or what is your mission? And that's a clue. If you feel like that, that's a clue that as a man, that you need to check in with yourself and with those around you. Maybe you've lost your mission. Or maybe you don't feel like you have one.
That's a great point. And so, like, for a long time, as you're talking about your career, you had a mission of who you were becoming in your career.
Right.
Well, we can have different missions too, right?
Well, we can have exactly.
And we want our missions to coincide with who we are as men, right?
Yes.
And like knowing ourselves well enough to be like, hey, this is not the right mission. Like somebody else might want this mission for me, but
Right.
not for me,
Right.
And I think, you know, um, everybody's got something different. You're a doctor, and went as soon as I got out of school, I went the banking route and quickly figured that wasn't for me. So I became an entrepreneur, and um,
But think about your own life. Like you were
yeah,
when you were in youth leagues, you were learning, you were becoming a person who understood and could play basketball. Then
yeah,
it was becoming someone who can make the high school team or good enough. And then it was like, oh my gosh, now I'm a D1 Division 1 college athlete. Um, you know, and
and
then
and then after that was the hardest time
yeah,
when you don't have the next thing that you are becoming.
right,
And I think I'm hoping that we're speaking to a lot of men right now who are finding themselves in this place of like, I'm going to work every day, but I'm not inspired.
right,
I'm getting up and I'm doing for my family, but I'm just kind of I'm just getting through life.
right,
There is more to life than just getting through it.
right.
There's more to life than just getting through it. And when we have a mission, when we have a purpose, when we're also with other people that are also pursuing a purpose that's greater than themselves, it makes us come alive as men.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the purposes behind what we're doing together,
Right.
is trying to bring that back out of men and encourage
Right.
men to find a mission, find something that's bigger than ourselves, find something to give yourself to. And it can be in your career, but it doesn't have to be.
And that's, and the other thing about this is on a societal level, it'd be interesting to see if you looked at Jordan Peterson's content or if you could sit down and talk with him. But to me, a missionless man is a dangerous man.
Absolutely. No question. And for this episode, one of the quotes that I had written down was, idle hands are the devil's workshop.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and so you think about some of your buddies that were in high school or in college and they didn't have something they were trying to become.
Right.
They were train wrecks.
Right. Absolutely.
Because there wasn't anything that they were going for. They didn't have a sense of what their mission was.
Right.
And when I look at the hardest times in my life, when I've been a train wreck, if you will, it's because my mission wasn't clear.
Right.
It wasn't clear to me. Like, it's not like it has to be clear to everybody else. We can put whatever we want up online and say, hey, this is what I'm doing, guys. But really, the mission has to be clear to us. What we're pursuing has to be clear to us.
Do you think too that you have these different facets of yourself as a human being, your thought life, your emotional intelligence, your health, your physical health, and you need missions in those arenas too, and those should coincide with your overall mission. And like I think about this too, there's a lot of people that are D1 athletes that don't go on to pro sports.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Or even high school athletes that can't go on to be collegiate sports. And if your sole mission is that, and then that goes away, you've pulled the rug out from
Dude,
under somebody.
I've seen that so much. And so for the past 15 years, I've been a basketball trainer and have worked with little kids all the way up to NBA guys and all in between. A lot of college kids come through, a lot of college kids and a lot of overseas guys. And for the college player that can't continue their career because they're not quite good enough and basketball has been their life.
Right.
The rug gets pulled out from under them, and lost is the only way that I could describe it.
Right.
They're trying to hang on to something that's not there for them anymore, and nobody's directing them or giving them some sort of guidance or pulling out the gifts that they have beyond their sport so that they continue to live a life that is productive, a life that they're proud of, a life that they're is out of their gifts and their abilities and their skills. And so it's this place where they feel lost. And then you get to guys like us that are in our 40s, and maybe we have the house and the family and the cars and the stuff that we thought would make us happy 10 years ago.
Right.
And then we're like, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
Like, is this it?
Yeah.
Because I don't feel fulfilled right now. I feel kind of lost.
Right.
So it's often trying to re-engage with like what our mission is.
Right. Getting there and doing that deep work and understanding that. And I think too, if you're wondering out there, is my job fulfilling, or is this or that fulfilling, or is this my passion or purpose or whatever? If you go to work each day and you feel like you're becoming something different or better, or more than you were the day before, the answer is
Yeah.
yes. If you're going to work to get a paycheck, get status, get acceptance, approval, get that's a big one. Whatever to get something, then the answer is probably no.
Yeah.
The answer is probably
Yeah.
no.
And
Yeah.
and what does a purpose do for us? Like I looked up a study from the National Library of Medicine, and it was 7,000 men around the average age of 23 years old. And the gist of this was that the greater sense of mission is associated for men is a greater psychological well-being.
Wow.
Like, how
Yeah.
much has this come out, especially after COVID and the pandemic, and like where everybody was isolated,
I know.
how poor mental health has, like we're more aware of it now, but it's also like, oh, we're aware of a bunch of terrible mental health
Right.
practices
Right.
within our society. It's led to a mission is associated with a greater self-esteem, greater emotional processing, and greater emotional expression.
Wow, that's fantastic. I
And
didn't
so,
know. Yeah.
like, when you think about that and how this impacts us as men, if we are without a mission, we are literally unhealthy.
Absolutely.
It's
100%.
right. And so, this is the importance. I call it the locker room effect. To
Yeah.
have somebody or a group of guys that you are on a mission with. I think that's why guys take golf trips. I
Right.
think that's why,
Yeah.
12 or 16
That
guys,
camaraderie, yeah.
yeah, pack into a van or fly somewhere.
It's like a mission. Like
Yeah.
there's an objective to
Yes.
plan, to get to the
Yeah.
location, to do these things. Yeah.
Right. And that's why guys get excited about it. We've talked about the movie Braveheart and how impactful that movie is. To me, it's like you've got all these Scottish guys that are wearing kilts. I mean, I don't know if I'd wear a kilt, but and they're just in the village. They're just guys.
Yeah.
And then finally,
Well, they're kind of just working to survive and get along, and
right? And they're trying to not get killed by the British regime. So, and then you've got somebody who stands up to the the English, and all of these dudes are like, "Let's go! It's time. We've been ready."
right.
You
It's that
know,
mission.
and
Yeah.
then they have a mission.
It galvanizes them.
Yes.
Yeah. And you have a group of men coming together around a common mission. So I think about that when I think about some of the BetterMen groups, retreats, and so forth. You have guys coming around a common theme or a common purpose, and it galvanizes you, and it brings that out in you, and it develops that in you, and that's really important for a man's development, well-being, psychological well-being. And if you had any doubt, there's literal, peer-reviewed literature to tell us that that's the truth, and we see that in our daily lives.
But this is the thing. It's like it's almost like for guys, like we're waiting for something shitty to happen for us to like actually make a big change.
Right.
Right. And so like you talked about our retreats. Like there's so many guys that will benefit from just being around other guys and realizing that they're not alone.
Right.
That list of 12 things that we talked about in the first episode,
Right.
like being with other guys and being honest and getting real can be so therapeutic.
Oh man, it's crazy.
So that when you get back to your work or your family, you are now a healthier guy, right? You've gone through.
So let me tell you about that. And there's an emotional release, and maybe it's kind of like that acceptance. It's this lie that you tell yourself that you can't do this, or I can't be emotional, I can't approach this. You almost get a sense of permission when you're with other guys that, okay, this is it. It's a normalcy. It normalizes it. And I'll tell you, for the audience at home, I remember. You'll probably remember this. That I was in when this happened, and it coincides with the development of this podcast. I was tough. I was going away. I had just quit this job that I had been on this decades long mission to achieve and get to, and then have been doing it for a decade. I've been a trauma surgeon for 10 years. And I was fundamentally shaken to my core about my purpose in life and lack of mission, or maybe the wrong mission, going to work to get something, not become something, doing travel surgery, locum surgery. And it was hard, man. It's lonely, isolating. And I sought Colin out first initially to just say, hey, I like your work. I like the book. It resonates with me. Let me learn more about what you're doing. And then it was, can I help? Then it was, hey, I need your help. Then it was being okay with it. And remember, it took me a little while to accept the help. And Colin was good enough to come down on one of these trips. And that's the dedication as a coach that he had and has for the folks he coaches. To give you some brownie points there. I mean, but I didn't know we were going to go there, but just to tell you, and I remember us talking about relating with our wives and how we relate to our wives and trying to figure out some issues that I had with my wife and in the way that I was behaving and reacting to situations. And Colin saying, hey, I've gone through those same things. I'm here for you, man. Here's how I see it. Here's what I've learned. Talking about some things that I had gone through with my own father, what he had gone through with his father. I don't know. I never knew Colin. We grew up we couldn't be more different. We grew up but again, men go through these common things. And I'm it's kind of embarrassing, but I remember I was trying to choke it back. And I remember we were walking down that street in Jacksonville and I was crying, man. And it was, I was moved to tears and it was tough. And, but I felt like, okay, I had the permission. I had the insight. I was open to it. It was another guy. Maybe that was part of it too, was hearing somebody that went through a common struggle that I went through and saying, okay, because if you hear from somebody else that hasn't gone through what you've gone through, or you hear from your wife and you say, maybe, I hate to say this, admit this as a man, as a human being, but you don't understand from my point of view. Here was somebody who understood it from my point of view. It gave me that permission. It broke down that barrier. And the cool thing was, I went back that next week and I approached it with my wife and she said, where'd you get all this from? I said, I learned it from Colin. And she says, well, tell Colin, thank you. But it was cool because I was able to take that and make it a part of my outlook on the world and approach to the world. And it's not that Colin had all the answers. And it was just more of taking down the barriers and allowing you to go in, because here was another person going through the same thing, giving you a perspective from their side of things to allow you to then apply and make it unique in your life and then go and apply it. So I'm not saying any one person has all the answers.
Sure.
In fact, that was part of the thing, was that we don't have all the answers, but we can commiserate together that we don't. And it led to, that was the catalyst to then bring me into a conversation with my wife that I could not have otherwise had I not had that conversation with you on a deep level. And it was important to me and it was cool.
And that's the purpose of us connecting.
Yeah.
So that we can go to our places and be healthier, be better, be stronger, be more of who we want to be. Because you want to be a great husband. I already know that about you. You want to be a great father. You want to be a great provider. You want to be great at all those things. Well, we don't just become great.
Right.
Like, nobody just becomes great. Like, when we talk about Michael Jordan and Kobe all the time,
right.
Like, well, they were guided by some unbelievable coaches. Certainly, they had the desire within them, but they were also guided by some great coaches. They were guided by some great people who knew where they wanted to get to. Like, Phil Jackson was a champion as a player. Nobody really ever talks about it. He was with the Celtics, and he was a champion. Like, he knew how to win. And then he was able to take all the stuff that he knew and give it to Mike and give it to Kobe. And certainly they had the desire as well. But as men, like, we need to be able to get together and to be able to be real with each other, to stop faking it, and to get to a point where we can then become healthier, process all of this stuff so that we can be better for our families and so that we can
and
better
it gives
for
you
what
a
we
platform
do.
Yeah, and better what we do, and it gives you a platform and an avenue at which to pay that forward. Because if it just starts and then ends with you, that's where healthier men make a healthier world. Because you see, it could have started and stopped with Phil Jackson. But it didn't. It went to Michael, Kobe, and here's the cool thing that we now find out 3 years after Kobe died. And I was talking to you about this offline the other day. Oh my gosh, it was what a transcendent moment when Djokovic won his 24th U.S. Open, right? and he talks about Kobe, how Kobe got him through the dark times. And I was like, what is happening? This is amazing. So here was Kobe, an American, Djokovic, a Serbian, Kobe, black guy, Djokovic, a white guy. They couldn't be more different. And to transcend those supposed societal constructs into these common themes that as men, as pro athletes, as people who were committed to excellence were struggling with and getting through them. And oh my gosh, man. I was like, holy cow. And here he was dedicating this to Kobe 3 years after his death. It was amazing. So that is the power.
But what did they connect on? They connected in the struggle. He said, Kobe helped me get through my dark times. He didn't say Kobe texted me when I won my,
yeah.
No, I mean, that's cool. And I'm sure he did.
Yeah.
But Kobe got me through the dark times.
He
Who's
did.
helping us get through the dark times?
Yes.
Like we connect in the struggle. And so many times number one, as men, we don't like to say that there's dark times. I don't know if you're from me, but from what's passed down in me is like, there are no dark times. We got another day ahead of us and everything's great.
I got this. Yeah.
Well, that's not the truth. I mean, let's be honest. Like, things get hard, life is difficult, and there are challenges, right?
Yeah.
But who's helping us get through it?
Right.
And that's the importance of having a mission and having other men to like get real with.
Right.
And so it's the struggle. Like that when we're able to share in the struggle, that's what connects us.
Absolutely.
And that's what when we don't have anybody to share the struggle with, that's when there's really dark times.
Right.
That's when you see.
Or if we let these societal and so that's a theme that plays out in multiple iterations. If we let these supposed societal constructs keep us from sharing our struggle.
Yeah.
Like, it's so funny. It's the struggle that brings us together.
Yeah.
It's the difficult times. And we want to avoid that. We want to pretend like they're not there.
And society says you shouldn't struggle, Jason. If you're really successful, you shouldn't struggle. So if you are struggling, pretend like you're not.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, it's not true. And turns out everybody's going through it.
Yeah. Yeah. And
anyway, that's the crux of it. And so, do men need a mission? Absolutely, they do.
Yeah.
Ask yourself: Are you each day? Are you becoming something? Or are you trying to get something? Ask yourself: Do you have people around you that understand you, that you can reach out to? If you haven't, why not? What do you need? Find a coach, find a mentor, find a group. Whatever it takes, connect with other men, reach out on those common themes of struggle, find your mission. Don't be afraid to do that. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, if hopefully this is helping the listeners kind of dive in to their own stories about when they've had a mission and they felt alive and fulfilled, and maybe when there's a time where they haven't. So we certainly encourage you guys to.
But I don't want to leave them with a teaser.
No.
And maybe you're about to go in that. I'm sorry to interrupt, but so where can men connect with you if they want to know more? And by the way, I remember soon after having this trip, and this event with Colin on a personal level, I hired him as a coach. I then learned of a guy in my practice who thought he needed testosterone replacement therapy of all things, and actually his testosterone was phenomenal. It was high. It was through the roof. I said, buddy, I think you need to talk to my friend Colin. He's like, who? And I was like, this guy. Oh yeah, I kind of heard. And I've got texts from him and letters from him. Remember, and I saved them. And what a beautiful moment that was when I got that thank you letter back from this guy. I call him FS. We don't want to put any names out there, but and I was so grateful to have had a profound impact. And all I did was direct him to the right person, but sometimes that's all it takes. Man. And he was so ecstatic to connect with another guy and guys that understood what he was going through and the changes that he was making because of it, that he wrote this beautiful thank you letter, and that I'll always cherish, honestly. But if we're here and we have this public forum, I want to know how people can connect with you.
Yeah.
If they want to learn more about this. You
have
a website?
And we BetterMenConnect.com. And then certainly we will have retreats coming up.
Yeah.
We'll have a summit coming up in the spring. So Jason and I will get that information out to you guys pretty soon. And certainly follow us on social media at the BetterMen Project on Instagram. I think what you're talking about is super important because in that regard, you did when he came to you, you did your part of, hey, I'll check this kind of stuff for you and see. But then you were like, hey, your heart is to help guys, and you
Right.
have your specialty in the way that you do, um, which is something that we will definitely have an episode on, men's total health. Um, but you also saw where a need could be filled, and I just had a call with him last night, and he was like, "Man, why don't guys do this more? Why, like and I was like, "Well, you didn't before.
That's right. Yeah.
Not until the shit hit the fan did you think that you needed some sort of help and guidance." And the reality is, it all depends on what we want to become.
Right.
With what you were talking about before. If we want to become something and we can't get there, we need to link up with somebody that can help us get there.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
And I'm starting to think too, the more I think about this, and the parallel to medicine for me is that we are really good at understanding when there's an acute disaster happening in our health. Clearly, right? I mean, it's
Sure.
obvious, right? Somebody's having a stroke and their face is or having a heart attack. But all the things that led up to that
Yeah.
that we could have prevented.
Yeah.
And so another thought is too, if you're out there listening to this and saying, that's really good, these guys are doing this, and I think that, ask yourself, are you connected in a group? Are you connected with other guys that you're around? Because the key would really be it's great to save somebody from a heart attack in that moment. It's great to save somebody from a stroke. And I think that's amazing. And medicine has done an absolutely amazing job, no doubt. Or a victim of multi-system trauma. But what if and a lot of trauma, for instance, in my life as a trauma surgeon, I know this, is preventing car accidents, right?
Yes.
And that's not the glamorous stuff that gets all the attention, but that's probably where it's probably almost more important. So even if you don't have those things and your mission is not in question or anything, women are really good at this and finding these friend groups, and it's not that they have all the answers either. And I'm not saying you shouldn't question yourself as a woman either, but they just are naturally better at than men. But ask yourself, are you connected?
Yeah.
Maybe you just need to be connected
Yeah.
so that you can prevent the disaster from happening,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
So it's not only for the person that's having a disaster, even though I was just pointing that out and you were saying the same. It just occurred to me that, wait a second, this is kind of like preventative health too.
100%.
Maintenance of your psychological and emotional health and development of yourself as a man comes in these groups. If it wasn't ours, and another one that's good that's out there, but look at your local resources, what you have out there. Connect with us. Be free to answer any questions or direct you in the right direction if it wasn't us. But do it even if you think that you don't have an acute massive need for it, because you could probably prevent something.
Absolutely.
What do you think?
Yeah, 100%. And the reality is we are really good in our society at looking at the outside. And we can see whether somebody looks good or they look in shape, they look like they're fit, or they look healthy. It's much more difficult to determine whether somebody's actually healthy on the inside,
right?
Because we don't know. There's plenty of people that look healthy in terms of their physique,
so true.
but on the inside, they're a mess,
right?
And so there is a parallel of, hey, if you're going to get fit physically, like you have to do something every day to take care of yourself,
right,
and to keep yourself fit. And then so from an internal side of things, from a psychological side of things, there's things that we have to do every day to keep ourselves mentally fit, to keep
right,
ourselves mentally healthy. You rarely see, super fit people having cardiac arrest or issues on I'm guessing, I'm certainly not the doctor, but like physical health, it's preventative, right?
Right.
And so the same thing, like, can we do the preventative stuff on the inside as well? Really taking care of ourselves. And that's part of what you're talking about, is just getting connected.
Absolutely. Well, hey man, it's been a pleasure. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Yes, sir.
All right, man. See ya.